Hey, it's time for another edition of Spitting Loogs with ESPN's Tom Luginbill. I'm Lance Taylor from the next round. It is on Disrupt the Media. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. It is always brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Put in that promo code at checkout next round. They're going to hook you up with a big bonus at mybookie.ag. So you were at Bedlam. That's one of those games I like watching on TV. I've never really cared about going to the game. I've been to Stillwater, I've been to Norman. I knew this was going to be a hyped up environment. Was it even, did it exceed your expectation for how much hate was in the air?
I think it probably met my expectation. And full disclosure, our crew had this game in Norman last year in ABC Prime when both of the teams were playing so poorly. It didn't even seem like it was a rivalry game. It was just another game where each team was trying to survive and get a last win. But this one was the in-stadium environment, and I don't know if you've ever been to Stillwater, but it's not very big. It's actually very, very quaint. It's small, but they're right on top of you, and it's really loud. They allow the students, to have those paddles, and they're knocking them against the padded walls. The field is right up. The walls are right up against the field, but I felt like there was this feeling like Oklahoma State was saying, fine, Oklahoma, beat it. Go do your SEC thing. Get out of here. We're through with you. Like, that was kind of what felt like I perceived it to be kind of the air in that stadium was, all right, one little kick out the door and here we go.
Hey, when you sat down with Mike Gundy and Derek Mason and that staff.
Well, Derek's not there anymore.
Derek's not there. Yeah. I mean, so it was week 2 or 3. When was the bye? What was the story where Mike Gundy said, hey, look, man, we got to get this thing right?
So, and I asked him about that in my post-game interview. So they went 3 straight weeks where they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do at quarterback, couldn't run the ball a lick. Ollie Gordon had 19 combined carries. Then they went into the bye week, and literally Ollie Gordon walked into Coach's office and said, Coach, you need to make me the feature back. I can fix this. And they sat down together, and Mike Gundy off of that meeting went into the staff room and said, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put him in the pistol. We're going to set him really deep, and we're going to get away from some of our zone stuff because right now in the offensive line, we're not good enough to win those matchups. We're going to go to some gap scheme stuff, meaning counter and split zone, some of these different things. And this is what we're going to try to do. So the next week they go and they play Iowa State. They lose a close game, but looked like a different football team. They settled on Alan Bowman at quarterback. Ollie Gordon started getting going in the run game. And from that moment on, everything changed. And right now, I mean, they're in a position to be playing for a Big 12 conference championship. And this was a team, you could make an argument that coming into the season had the most tumultuous offseason of any team in the Big 12. Had a mass exodus of the transfer portal, had a lot of negativity swirling around the program. A lot of people, I think, were wondering, could this be the end for Mike Gundy? And if you could make an argument, it's been his best coaching job in years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, Sark sitting there with every opportunity to get to a college football playoff for the first time in the history of Texas program. And he's got the one loss and he's got a great win in Tuscaloosa. But your Big 12 Coach of the Year up until this point has got to be Mike Gundy, right?
I think so. I mean, if you're going to take the season in totality and really examine, because, a lot of people point to the South Alabama loss for Oklahoma State. They lost 33-7. I don't think they realize until you go back and watch that game just how bad the 33-7 was. Like, sometimes there's games that play out a certain way and it gets deceiving and what have you, and it plays out in the fourth quarter and you're like, well, score's not really indicative. Oh, yeah, it was. And I think that to me is shows a real sign of resiliency and leadership. And really, they credit Alan Bowman, the journeyman quarterback, as kind of being the galvanizing force, because I think he brought some leadership skills that they felt were lacking at the position there that have really kind of glued the locker room together.
Massive win for Alabama this past Saturday against LSU. Great environment. I was in Tuscaloosa. And it seems like Tommy Rees finally took the reins off of Jalen Milroe and played to his strengths or called to his strengths. And Jalen Milroe had a heck of a day, heck of a night. They end up winning the game by 14. Now they've got one of these lazy 11 o'clock road games. in Lexington, solid Kentucky team. Probably not the best we've seen under Mark Stoops, but a really good team.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is one of those trap games at all for Alabama the way they're playing right now?
I think every game's a trap game for Alabama, just like every game is a trap game for Texas. I mean, when we look at college football this past weekend, like how critical was that win for Alabama? You look at the Big 12 we were just talking about. I mean, you really think about it. The entire college football playoff opportunity for the Big 12 came down to 1 4th and 4 in Austin, Texas last week. If Kansas State gets that, the Big 12 is done.
Yeah, why didn't Kleiman kick there? I mean, first of all, the play calling was horrible once they got to the 4. Yeah, but I just didn't understand. Like, to me, they were the better team with Murphy at quarterback, them being Kansas State. So why not take the 3 there? I know they had missed a short field goal earlier towards the end.
They made a long one to tie it.
Yeah, so, I would have continued to extend that game.
Yeah, I go back and forth on that because I feel like oftentimes on a Sunday or a Monday, and you have games like that, and we're going to be critical either way, right? We're going to sit there and we're going to look at Jed Fish at Arizona and go, why would you not just go for the win against SC and instead give the ball back to Caleb Williams? And guess what? They lost the game because of that. But then if he does it, you kind of talk the next day saying, well, man, they're in it with USC. They weren't even supposed to be. So I can see both sides of the argument. I just think they wanted to get out of there. They were down 27-7. Probably had no business, being in the football game at that time. But they crawled back in. And I think they were going to give it a shot. It was a little bit like the UCF-Oklahoma game that I had with the 2-point conversion that Gus Malzahn came up with. Just a bad play call. And I thought the whole sequence of play calls there for Kansas State, they weren't at their finest. But anyway, getting back to Alabama, I think the way things are going right now in college football is you've got to know that every single game you're playing now, if you're Alabama, is an SEC championship game. You win, you advance. You win, you advance. And it doesn't matter who the opponent is, but that's got to be your mindset. And I think this Alabama team it's been a slow burn, but they've generated this level of confidence that was sorely lacking in the first 3 to 4 weeks. And, listen, it's still not pretty at all times. It's not perfect. But you mentioned Tommy Rees. I think not only has he done a good job, but I would make an argument that Jalen Milroe, for the first time last week, looked like a guy that was just being himself and not somebody that was trying to fit in to a mold of what everybody says the quote-unquote quarterback should be. And I felt like he was really trying to do that. It was like sticking a square peg into a round hole. I didn't see any of that on Saturday. I thought he got rid of the ball quicker. He scrambled when he needed to. He didn't move himself into sacks. He just looked like a different player. So from a confidence perspective, I don't see this as a trap game at all. And I actually think the benefit of this game is on the defensive side for Alabama, because from what I've seen from Devin Leary, being a 57 or 59% completion percentage guy is not going to beat Alabama. And if Alabama loads up and stops the run and says, all right, Devin Leary, good luck. Let's see if you can beat us. I just don't know if I've seen anything that proves to me that he could.
He is ESPN's Tom Luginbill at Spittin Loogs right here on Disrupt the Media. I'm Lance Taylor from the Next Round. Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. This is always brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Holidays right around the corner. They've got a variety of products like the Handyman right here. Great stocking stuffers. Go to manscaped.com. Put in that promo code Loogs, Loogs. That is promo code Loogs. So if I look around, I mean, this could be one of those bloody Saturdays in college football. Because, I mean, Penn State, obviously the record for James Franklin against top 10 teams, 3-16, is awful. But they've got every opportunity to win that game. You look at Utah. I mean, we know Kyle Whittingham and that squad could go into Seattle, beat Washington. Ole Miss has got a fighting shot against Georgia. What else do we have out there? USC, Oregon. I mean, some of these don't look
Florida State, Miami,
Texas, TCU, which you'll be at. I mean, this could be one of those snow globe Saturdays where things really get shaken up.
Well, we've seen each and every week, if you don't bring your A game, you're in danger of going down. And you don't even have to be playing a team that's as good or better than you. And that's what makes each and every Saturday so scary. I mean, like I said about last week in the Big 12, the entire conference came down to 1 4th and 4. You look at the Pac-12. Is Oregon clearly the better team? Yes. But SC can score. The bottom line is SC can score. And you might have fired Alex Grinch, but you didn't fire all the players. It's still the same
Right.
players that SC's playing with on defense. And I wish, for Utah's perspective, if you're a Utah fan, I just wish you felt better about the quarterback position. If that game was in Salt Lake City, I think you'd feel better about it. The fact that you've got to go on the road, and Washington hasn't been perfect, particularly as of late. Defensively, they've got their own concerns. Offensively, they got back on track last week, which a lot of people tend to do against USC. For me, I think the entire weekend has a ton of intrigue to be upset city across the board. And maybe they'll all play out the way they're supposed to, an old chalk, but I don't know. I love it. I'm here for every ounce of it, dude.
Ole Miss, Georgia, this would be by far Lane Kiffin's biggest win in Oxford. And this would really shake things up because the SEC would be a complete mess at that point, at least trying to figure out who that team is that can get into the college football playoff. Do you give Ole Miss a shot here, though?
I do, just because Ole Miss has done a good job of playing to their strengths, right? And they've done a good job of playing in big games and playing well. I do think this needs to turn into a track meet, though. They have to somehow get going fast early. That's the whole mode of operation for Ole Miss on offense. If they can't do that, then they're going to be in trouble. I think the benefit for Georgia in this game is you just played Missouri. Missouri is very similar to Ole Miss in terms of substance, explosiveness, quality quarterback play, difference makers on the perimeter, the ability to run the football. And you've kind of gotten a sense of that, and you took care of business versus Missouri. Now, is Ole Miss the better team on paper? No, I don't think they are. I do think, though, that the whole thing is going to be predicated on whether or not Ole Miss is successful on first down so that they can set tempo. If they're not, it's going to be awfully difficult for Ole Miss in this football game. And the thing about Georgia that's similar to Alabama was Alabama created so many negative plays, so many tackles for lost plays against Ole Miss, that they were always playing behind the chains, Ole Miss, so they couldn't ever go fast. They couldn't be who they are. And Georgia's capable of doing the same thing.
He is ESPN's Tom Luginbill at Spittin Loogs right here on Disrupt the Media. Like and subscribe. It is brought to you by Lance'sLock.com. Jump on board every league, every day. We've got plays for you. We've got weekly plays, our weekly packages. We've got monthly packages, annual packages. Jump on board. Free play every day. Lance'sLock.com. You talked about the Big 12, 4 yards away from a walk-off. That conference was dead and buried. I feel the same about the ACC with Florida State. Now, you look at Florida State's schedule. Miami could be tricky. Florida could be tricky. But more than likely, most people think they win out. But would you say shakiest conference right now, ACC or Big 12?
That is such a great question because, all right, so let's start with the ACC. I think what's so disappointing about the ACC is how good it started, right? We were 4-0 Miami, 4-0 Syracuse, 4-0 Duke, 4-0 North Carolina. And then you've got Florida State, of course. And then the disappointing teams like NC State, have not played up to their billing. And then as of late, all of those teams I just referenced have started to falter. And I still think Miami has good players. I still think Miami's got the personnel to be a problem for Florida State. I really do. But as far as top to bottom, I would say the Big 12. And I say that because I think the group of 5 teams that entered the league are in a distinct transition period where their depth has been challenged, their top-level talent has been challenged, and none of them have been overly successful. You also have a football team that played for a national championship out of the Big 12 that is in danger of maybe not going bowling this year. Forget winning the Big 12. May not be eligible for a bowl. I think that's only the second time that's happened since 2010. What would it be? I think LSU 2020 and Texas in 2010.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think that's what it is. And so I would probably lean slightly towards the Big 12, because I also think that coming into the season, we kind of knew who the good teams coming into the season were likely going to be and have been at least competitively good with the ACC. But going into the season with the Big 12, like, people thought Baylor would be a lot better. People thought TCU would still be, an 8 or 9 win football team. They did a really nice job in the transfer portal. People thought Texas Tech was going to be really good. All right. Kansas State wins the Big 12 last year, but they've got 3 losses. So I don't know. It's a great toss-up debate that you could probably go on and on with, but the TCU one sticks in my side. It's just hard. It's hard to be in a national championship game and completely not make bowl season, and that could happen.
It's crazy. But back to the ACC, and before the season started, you and I both were in agreement. Brendan Armstrong transferring to NC State under Dave Duran. This could be a really good team. And now you've got MJ Morris, who's taken over. He's 3-1 as a starting quarterback. And yesterday he decides to tap out. And he's like, I'm done after 4 games. And his dad goes on air on a radio show, and he's like, we still have a commitment to NC State. He's not transferring out. Well, if you're not transferring out,
why aren't you playing?
Yeah, and Dave Duran just endorsed the kid on Monday.
It's a strange set of circumstances. I don't like it.
Before you get into it, first, is he a good quarterback? I mean, he's 3-1 as a starting quarterback. I thought he's been okay. I watched him against Clemson. Thought he was okay.
Yeah, he's okay. I thought he did a really good job last year when he was thrust into duty when Devin Leary got injured, and they shouldn't have played him. They had to play him. He hung in there. I thought he showed a lot of resiliency and toughness. I just don't like the message that this sends in any way, shape, or form. And personally, like, I don't think kids and either their parents or the people they're leaning on for advice and support, do they sit back and say, if we make a move like this and we go into the transfer portal, which he's claiming he's not going to do, but let's just say we presume that he does, do they not realize that every other coach in the portal that may have interest in him is going to do, guess what? They're going to call Dave Doran, and they're going to call every assistant coach they know on that staff and go, what's the deal with this guy? Like, do they not think that through? I mean, it's the first thing I'd be doing.
And that's the thing, man. I don't know. You're around this a lot because you've been in the recruiting game forever. And look, you've actually recruited kids and you've been recruited. But it's almost like, this guy's dad is the one that's pulling the strings. And if that's the case where, hey, look, we can make more money with you going somewhere else. You need to pull it right now, pull the plug, and after 4 games, let's save a year of eligibility. I mean, that's really sad if you've got somebody telling a kid to do that. And I don't know if that's the case or not.
Yeah, it reeks, right? And there's bad optics associated with it. And it creates doubt. It creates a perception that you're not all in, that you're not committed. I mean, when you think about it, like, if the other guys on that team, they got to be asking the question. And on the other, not only are they asking the question, what's going on? They're probably having the same internal conversation you and I are having right now. And then on top of it, you're going, well, could this bleed into other guys? And all of a sudden, does Dave Doran have other guys coming into the house and say, well, you know what, I'm going to sit down too, coach. I'm going to redshirt as well. And blah, blah. I mean, it's bad ball. I don't like it.
Okay, so this is random, but I brought this up on the air today. I think Florida fans are one of the more impatient fan bases in college football.
Oh, yeah.
And Billy Napier, after the Utah win last year, they were like, this is going to be great. And that's really been – Tennessee was a big win this year. But since then, he's had really 2 what you would call quality wins since he's been there in a year plus. When you start to look at the schedule, they go to LSU, they go to Missouri, and they've got Florida State. It looks like they're going to drop 3 consecutive, which would be 5 consecutive, which puts them at 5-7, not bowl eligible. If they were to blow him out and go to Deion Sanders and say, look, we know there's a little animosity between you and your university, Florida State, because Deion won't call him by name. Do you think Florida would go outside of the box and hire Deion? And if they did, with his ability to recruit and market, could this be a problem for the SEC?
Oh, man, you've asked a question that's got so many tentacles. It's
well, look, a lot of the shine, as you think this over, has been taken off of, Sean Lewis went from what an incredible hire to not even calling plays.
He's the only reason they've been any good.
I don't
get it. His career might get ruined off of this.
Right? I know.
I don't think it will, but this is here's my first off. I don't believe Florida will do that, even though I do agree with you. I think they will drop 3 straight. I do think Billy Napier can recruit. I do think he knows how to build a program. I do think it's a very difficult place to do it at. And it's there's a lot of hands in the cookie jar, and everybody's disgruntled all the time. You kind of get the feeling that's a little Texas-like, when Sark guy, everybody's, just a toxic climate, and you're having to weed through all of that. And if you're not winning immediately, it makes it worse and worse and worse. And then boom, they're going to pull the trigger. So it's like Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen didn't start taking stupid pills when he got the Florida job. I mean, to do what he did at Mississippi State's been sensational. So there is something to the internal dynamic there, but I don't know if that's who they would go after. Not because he's a Florida State guy, and I think we need to wait and see on this whole entire Colorado scenario on how it plays out ultimately when Travis Hunter and his two sons are not within the program. Because, Deion has gone on record of, well, what are you going to do when you're not playing well in the offensive line? Well, we'll replace them all. Well, what are you saying to your offensive line? What are you saying to your team? What are you saying? The whole entire locker room is constantly on pins and needles, feeling like they're one play away, one step away from being replaced. Well, what are you going to do? Turn it over 50, 60 guys every year? Is that what we're going to do here?
Yeah,
And
it's
so
almost like the unhappy, you get married and like 6 months into it, I don't like how the noise you make when you're brushing your teeth. Like everything
right.
that you do wrong. Hey, look, we're going to have to talk about this. I don't know if this is going to work out. You can only get so many divorces.
Right. And ultimately, I think the long-term view of this is, they're going to, if we're going to talk about Deion Sanders in Colorado and how it would play out if it was at a place like Florida or anywhere else, is like, you still, okay, you had to do this at Colorado. And did you improve in a couple of spots? Yes. Is your depth in your front on both sides of the ball really, really bad? Yeah. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. We've all seen it. So you have to go back to what is going to be the core foundation of the program. That's high school recruiting. Well, we haven't quite seen that yet. Okay. We've seen the transfer portal turnover. We've seen them be able to improve the quarterback position and the receiver and corner position in the snap. Like, what will we be talking about 2 years from now? What will we be talking about 3 years from now? Will we be talking about 3 consecutive top 10 recruiting classes with 10 to 12 portal guys supplementing it every year at Colorado? See, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. And the more you outwardly criticize your own roster or, show any type of, we got to improve this, or we got to go in another direction, how attractive is that going to be to the high school recruit or the transfer portal recruit? It's a tough question to answer right now. Maybe it won't matter. I don't know.
He's ESPN's Tom Luginbill. It's Spittin' Loogs right here on Disrupt the Media. Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. It is always brought to you by MyBookie, where you use that code NEXTROUND, secure that bonus at checkout at mybookie.ag. College football rankings basically stayed the same 1 through 8. If I asked you right now, though, neutral site, Florida State, Ole Miss, who you got?
Wow.
The reason I bring this up is somebody told me I was crazy. Question. I was like, I just get a feeling these teams are kind of the same.
I do.
Like, too. I don't know. I think they're really good. I don't think they're great. I don't think they can win a championship. I've got 4 teams that I believe can get to a college football playoff and win 2 games. Those are 2 teams I don't believe are there. So I kind of said, neutral site, I think it'd be a really good game. And a couple of people said you're insane. Florida State's so much better.
Oh, I don't know about that. I listen, and I've had Florida State this year, and I like them. Don't get me wrong; they're really good. Mike Norvell has done a great job. I think those 2 teams are very, very similar. I don't think either team's great in the offensive line. At times, each team has shown flashes on defense, but I wouldn't say consistently. I mean, you look at Florida State the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Go look at them statistically on defense. They weren't stopping anybody, right?
Yeah, how did they stop LSU in the second half?
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, it's baffling when you look back.
LSU was not what we see LSU as.
That's
now.
true. Yeah,
LSU is not playing that way offensively now. And again, when we in the off seasons and we talk about schedule, who you play, where you play, and when you play is a big part of the equation because teams are different at different times of the year, and that certainly could be said for Ole Miss earlier in the year. I mean, I had the game at Tulane. They should have lost to Tulane, right? Yep. That's not the same team we're seeing with Ole Miss right now. So I think it would be a great game. I want to go back to something you said about the college football playoff. It's so funny how, like, nothing changes, right? Because they're always going to default to the easiest decision that will allow the least amount of scrutiny as long as they can do it, right? Do you think anybody on that committee right now thinks Washington's a better football team than Oregon?
No, nobody. And
So
does
they're going to
anybody on
do
that
the
committee
easy
really
thing.
do they think Ohio State's the best team in college football? There's no way.
No. But again, until they have to make a difficult choice, here's what's going to be interesting. Let's play this thing out. So let's just say Alabama makes it to the SEC championship game, beats Georgia. All right, so 2-1 loss teams there. You have an undefeated Big Ten champ. All right, and you have a one-loss Pac-12 champ, whoever it is, an undefeated ACC champ, and a one-loss Big 12 champ in Texas who's beaten Alabama. Who do you leave out?
Oh. Yeah, I don't know how you leave Texas out, right?
But what if Florida State's undefeated?
They got a brand too. Yeah, I don't know. I think the ACC has gone from really deep conference to a very average conference.
I totally agree with you.
You can't leave out an undefeated Florida State. Hell, I don't know what you do.
I know, and that's the chaos that the committee to this point hasn't had to deal with. Like they haven't had to deal with. There's going to come a time where they're going to have to make a choice whether head-to-head matters more than who you think is the actual best team or who your eyes are telling you is playing the best football right now. And, you know, I look at Oregon, like I think Oregon is probably playing as good, if not better than any team in college football.
Yeah, they're one of the four that I would have. And I don't know if you agree with this. I think Michigan, Georgia, Oregon, and Alabama are teams that could beat two quality elite teams in a college football playoff. Those are the four I've got right now.
Yeah, and I think with Quinn Ewers, Texas could do it too because they're built, especially defensively and in the offensive line, they're built like Alabama. Well, they're better in the offensive line than Alabama, but they're built. Texas is built that way in the right spots. But no, I mean it's an intriguing question. I mean, there's some scenarios it could play out that literally it's not that hard for what I just outlined to actually happen. It's not.
So Alexander Payne, Jim Taylor, writing, directing duo that started out of Omaha, Nebraska, I think, but they've done Election with Reese Witherspoon. Fantastic.
Yeah.
They did Sideways. They've done About Schmidt. They've done The Descendants. I mean, they've done some really, really good movies.
Yeah.
And now they've got one called The Holdovers that is coming out this weekend with Paul Giamatti.
I love Giamatti.
It's got like 98% of Rotten Tomatoes. And the backstory, period piece from the 70s. He's at a prep school. He's a curmudgeon guy.
Yeah, they got to go home for Christmas break, right?
Yeah, he gets left there he's actually
babysitting, basically.
Yeah, he's babysitting. He's the chaperone of all the students that couldn't travel home.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be hilarious, but I'm going to see it Friday night. I don't know if this is on your radar or not. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is on my radar. I have no idea the next time I'll be able to go to a movie. It has Dead Poets Society written all over it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really, it's good. It just has
meet Son of a Woman, maybe. Dead Poets.
Absolutely. Good call, dude.
Yep.
Well, I want to see that. And I'll tell you the other one, I want to see Napoleon.
Oh, I do too. Yeah.
Ridley Scott makes great movies. And
to me,
Joaquin Phoenix is unbelievable.
Yeah. And as good as Joaquin was in The Joker, I thought Joaquin's best role ever was as Commodus, under Ridley Scott's direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's 23 years ago.
I know it. And so, there's some good stuff like coming out and coming up. And to be honest with you, I'm usually dialed in on that stuff, and I have not been lately at all.
I don't know if you're like me. You like recommending stuff that people haven't seen before. So I had a crew of people come in town this past week, and they were there Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday we were doing game stuff, Sunday night, Monday night. So I would just go through. I've still got a DVD collection, which they all thought was hilarious because I guess nobody's got them anymore.
Which means you have to have a DVD player.
Right. I've got a Blu-ray still. I've only got one in the house. But I was going through movies. Have you seen, have you not? And a couple of movies that they hadn't seen that we watched. Seven, one of my favorites, David Fincher, 1995.
Hasn't seen Seven?
A bunch of people hadn't, believe it or not. And then we watched Silence of the Lambs, which they hadn't seen Silence of the Lambs.
How old are these people?
All over the place.
How could you have not? I mean, that's almost on a level of saying I haven't seen Star Wars.
I know. Well, you'd be shocked at Dunaway and Brown. We need to do this one time when you come on, just a full segment of how many great films. Like you could take AFI's or AFI's top 100
Top
films of
100,
all time,
yeah.
and I bet they've seen 8 to 10 maybe.
Really?
Yeah. But if you had to go 7 or Silence of the Lambs, where would you go?
Oh, that is so good. Well, I will say this, and a lot of people do not agree with me when I say this. Until the last sequence and the last whole scene, okay, really from when Kevin Spacey is introduced.
Yeah. Yeah. When he basically he turns himself in.
Walks into the yeah.
Yeah.
From that point on, okay, from before that, from the beginning of the movie to that scene, I thought Brad Pitt was a horrible actor in that movie. I thought it was forced. I thought he was almost like a caricature. I don't know. I just didn't think he was very good. Now, from Kevin Spacey's introduction to the end, I thought he was remarkable. I mean, the emotion on his face when they're out in the desert is unbelievable. It's a really good question, but I would have to say, and I'm not a book guy, but I thought Silence of the Lambs was the best adaptation of a book to film that maybe outside of Jaws that has probably ever been done. And by the way, speaking of recommending movies, now you saw Red Dragon, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
I've seen Manhunter. I've seen it all.
Okay, that's what I was just going to bring up Manhunter. I was going to bring.
You know,
like,
one of the first times we did an interview, it was so funny. We were talking, and Brown was like, "You two know more about entertainment than anything," and you threw a trivia question to me. You were like, "Okay, who was Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter?" And I was like, "Brian Cox." And this is before Succession. You were like, "Holy shit! How did you get that right?"
It's
I mean,
such a good movie. Like you don't realize, like,
because I loved William Peterson back in the day.
Yeah, before CSI. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So, but no, I would probably have Silence of the Lambs, just a slight nod. But they're both like spectacular. And I got to be honest with you, a lot of people have tried to, in that formula, try to make other good either serial killer type movies, and very few have risen to the level of those two movies over the last 30 years.
Have you heard about this one coming out? Because I'm David Fincher is my favorite director.
Oh, he's great. I know it.
Yeah.
The Killer? Is it called The Killer?
Yeah. Michael Fassbender.
Awesome.
He's playing the serial killer, and I forgot exactly what the premise is, but it's got really good ratings, and it drops on Netflix this Friday.
The last serial, it's a Netflix. Okay, the last serial killer one Fassbender was in sucked, the Snowman. It looked like it was gonna be so good.
I didn't see it. Yeah, I just heard it was so bad. I agree.
So bad.
Yeah, like the trailer, I was like, okay, we could work with this.
Good,
and then
right?
everybody said it was just completely awful.
Who would you say, 7 or Silence of the Lambs?
I think I would lean 7 just because of how demented. I mean, both of them are really demented. Silence of the Lambs swept the Big 5 at the Academy Awards. There's just something about 7 from the score. Trent Reznor, the first collaboration with David Fincher. For Kevin Spacey to not even be credited just as John Doe. I just thought there were some really cool elements to that film, but I love both. They're both top 10s for me. But back to 7 and Brad Pitt's performance. It's a guy we first saw him come onto the scene in Thelma and Louise, which was a good film by its own right, way back in the day. And he was the good-looking new dude. You never thought he would end up being a good actor, but he's had some great roles. I've got like a top 10 Brad Pitt, like really deep, quality roles. But what would be your favorite right now?
Oh man! See, I'm going to tell. Full disclosure, I did not like Fight Club.
Okay, yeah, I didn't either. And David Fincher,
I
thought it was so overrated. It is such a cult film, and people are forced to like it, in my opinion. And I love Edward Norton.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I didn't like 12 Monkeys all that much, although I thought that might be his best performance.
He played crazy well. I did like 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, and then his other best performance is in Snatch. Although I don't think Snatch is one of his top 10 movies, but I think it's one of his best performances.
Those are all great calls. Inglourious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, he's really good in that. Like, again, he's got I feel like he is our era's Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Our parents grew up with Robert Redford and Paul Newman as being what we grew up with Brad Pitt and Matthew McConaughey being today.
Yeah, because they were known as just really good-looking dudes.
Yeah,
did some fun movies, but then you start to see the depth of their talent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you get past Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and then you go watch them do, watch Robert Redford next to Dustin Hoffman, or,
Dude, I thought
obviously.
when they cast Matt McConaughey and Amistad, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I don't know what we're trying to do here. This guy's never going to have
Yeah.
depth as an actor. And, then the 1 year, not long ago, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, he wins a Golden Globe for Best Actor in True Detective, and he wins an Academy Award for the Dallas Buyers Club.
And earned it. By the way, speaking of True Detective, so just out of nowhere, I was like, you know what? That was so good. And season 2 was so bad. And season 3 was so good. I'm just going to go back and watch season 1 of True Detective. So I had all these games. I had the game last Thursday, Saturday, last night. So I'm flying all over the place. And I just downloaded the first season of True Detective and watched it over again. Damn, that is the freaking good
3 times
show.
I've seen it from start to finish. And I think it's the best one season of television, just separated, that I've ever seen.
I think that's a fair argument. Now, I would throw out there Breaking Bad. I would throw out there The Wire.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about best season to best season.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, listen, I'm with you. And you didn't realize that, like, you thought it was 10, 12 episodes. It was only 8 episodes, and they got so much information into that thing.
The writing was
so good.
Oh, incredible. And in Rust and Marty, the way they actually just on the scene together. I mean, Matt McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. And there's that rumor out there they're brothers. Have you ever heard that?
Well, they're best friends in real life. I know that. So
I know they smoke a lot of weed, have a lot of fun. Ain't no doubt.
Apparently so.
Okay, so you're heading to Fort Worth, right?
Yeah, Texas TCU ABC primetime.
You think we got a shot at seeing a massive upset there?
The way that TCU is currently playing, no. And we're going to find out probably Friday whether Quinn Ewers can be able to go. He got updated from week to week, to day, so we will see. I just think it's interesting. The weight of the world's on the Texas Longhorns' shoulders. I mean, this is why Steve Sarkisian was hired. This is what everybody's expecting this Texas program to be, right? And now can they actually do it, right? Because every game, like I said, for Alabama, every game's a playoff game for them now. Every game is a championship game because they're the last of the Mohicans, right? They're the last one that has a shot, and they control all of it. They don't need anybody else's help. And this program hasn't been in that position in a long, long time.
He's ESPN's Tom Luginbill. It is Spitting Loogs right here on Disrupt the Media. It's brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Great products, great stocking stuffers, manscaped.com. Put in the promo code Loogs, Loogs. Hey, big thanks. We'll talk to you next week. And I don't know, I'm trying to recommend something that you watched The Mayor of Easttown, right?
Oh, yeah, fantastic. I started watching the new Taylor Sheridan show on Paramount, Lawman Bass Reeves.
Oh, I hadn't even heard about it.
Yeah, go check it out. It's actually a true story. It's a true story about the first ever African-American to become a U.S. deputy marshal post the Civil War. And I always mispronounce his name, but it's got David Oyuelo.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He plays the title character, Barry Pepper, who's one of the greatest character actors of all time.
Great sniper in Saving Private Ryan.
Yes, Dennis Quaid is in it, although he hasn't been introduced yet because I only got through one episode. But try that out. Taylor Sheridan looks like he's got another hit on his hands. Yeah,
I'll check it out. Hey, safe travels. We'll talk to you next week.
Bro.
ESPN's Tom Luginbill.